Michael Walsh, welcome back to Paper Napkin Wisdom. Excited to have you here for number 5 in our series. Man, time flies when you're having fun.
It does, doesn't it?
It sure does. All right. So we just to recap where we are, really quickly recap. We talked about the 4 danger zones in our first step. Danger zones around growth of an organization, 1 million, 2 million. So the first one being 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, just before 10 million, and then just before 20 million. And then after talking about those danger zones and those sort of hidden beneath the layer danger zones, talk about why those danger zones exist. And it's really about growth of an organization. And growth of an organization happens through people. When more people come into an organization, there are more complexities. People bring obviously value and perspective and horsepower, but they also have relationships with other people. And this is what gets really, really complicated because every time we double the number of people we have in the organization, we exponentially increase the number of relationships. 4 to 9 people, for example, go from 6 relationships to 36 people. Double it again, let's say to 16, not even doubling it. You go from 9 to 16 people, you go from 36 relationships to 120. So that's an exponential increase in the complexity of how to manage that. And Michael, when you talk about that, you talk about you add people, you outstrip your structures very quickly. And then in understanding that complexity, so we understand that people bring value to an organization, but at the same time, understanding their influences, what influences them, helps us understand what structures would be supportive of a scaling organization. And we went into the 4 driving influences of human behavior: survive, thrive, connect, and adapt. I'm just repeating that because that'll be important as we continue.
Hmm.
Then the next step, last episode, we discussed rethinking the core, where your teams drive results which yield profit and value, but instead of thinking that core being the results of the organization that drives profit and values, the team is part of the results. The team and the results live in the same part of the core, and there are now 3 drivers, 3 dimensions to the output, not just profit and value, but also professional and personal growth of the team itself. Correct?
Right.
All right. So where are we going today?
Well, the only one thing that I would add to what we've done so far, of course, the purpose of all this is to assist established business owners of service-based businesses or businesses that have a service component, how to increase their freedom in their business, from their business, and because of their business. So the whole idea is it's like when you're adding all these people and you're getting all this complexity, you're outstripping structures, you're doing a bunch of stuff, what happens is your freedom goes away as an owner. Owners, senior leaders, and managers. So the key is, how do we actually bring back the freedom? How do we actually make this far more effective? And one of the things we've done is we've talked about the difference between treating your business like a machine that's there for the benefit of the owners and the people become cogs in the system versus treating it like an intelligent ecosystem. And so the whole premise of how I grow a business in the 21st century is looking at it as an ecosystem, not as a machine. So and of course, that's essential to this whole notion of, instead of having the core of the business be about your ability to generate results for your customers that also give you a profit, it's your ability to generate results and the people who do it, as far as that's concerned. Because here's the thing, the days of I'm the boss and you're the employees, do your job, those days are gone. They don't exist anymore. Some people like to think they'd exist, but it doesn't actually work very well, even when it's still tried. In the 21st century, the power within service-based companies has shifted, okay? It used to be that the power would sit with the boss. Do what I tell you or you won't have a job. Oh, we're not in that type of environment anymore. The truth is the power sits right now with the intellect of your individual teams of knowledge workers, because they're the ones that actually generate the result. Okay. And I could force somebody to lift a rock. You could hold a gun to my head and say, Michael, lift that rock or I'll shoot you, or hold it to one of my loved ones and say that. And then I'd lift the rock. Whereas if you say, Michael, I'm going to hold a gun to your head and you need to actually be creative or else I'm going to shoot you. The brain just doesn't work that way. And given that the brain doesn't work that way, like we freeze up, we do all the different things. I need an environment that allows me to breathe, where I don't have to worry about my survival, where I can actually trust my fellow workers that together we can build something that's really interesting. That's where thriving comes in. That's where the ability to connect comes in. But it also allows us collectively, if we trust each other, to adapt to the environment as far as that side of it's concerned. So all that to say is that it just sort of underlines this whole notion of having teams be part of that core. You know,
So what you're really saying is, let's go back a little bit and make it really simple.
yep.
In modern organizations, if you want freedom in the business, freedom from the business, and freedom because of the business, which is what leaders want, what entrepreneurs want within organizations,
Yes.
you cannot have those by using the command control style of leadership that existed in the past, because your team is not adaptable. The world is changing quickly. And if you don't have them bring all of themselves to the organization, you don't get the freedom you want, because that's you having to run around and protect everybody and protect the organization from mistakes, because they're not even aware. They're just going through the motions. And I think that that's the critical part of this. You cannot get freedom in the business, from the business, and because of the business if you run command and control anymore. That's just not the way it works.
Correct. And a key part of that, how do I turn, well, my people are part of the core. Okay. The truth is that they are part of the core, whether you like it or not, but they have expectations as well. You see, when you're looking at, and this is where we enter today's napkin, which is labeled the social contract. You see, all of a sudden, it's not like do your job or else you won't get paid. People are like, snore, I'll go elsewhere because somebody will pay me better or somebody will treat me nicer or whatever. And actually, I was raised either a millennial or Gen Z or Gen Z, depending on which side of the border you're on. And my parents like me and I like my parents. So you know what? If I am without a job, they'll actually put me up. I still have my place. It's been interesting. My understanding is the average time, like the age when children leave the nest for the final time, okay, used to be 21. Now it's 33. So, and parents are like, sure, if you need something for 6 months or so while you get things sorted out or organized, no problem, come on back as far as that's concerned. That's a big difference. So all of a sudden, the bosses can't browbeat their people into doing what they want because they'll just vote some different direction. So there's this thing called a social contract. Now, in a social contract, both parties need something, okay? Employer wants things, the employee wants things. There's 4 things that I've listed for each. Okay. The first thing, if you take a look at the 4 things the owner or the company want, they obviously, when they hire somebody, if you hire me, you want me to generate an individual result. I mean, I'm there to generate a result. If you don't have me there generating a result, what am I doing there? Okay. And that's the most basic. The second one is you expect me, it's basically, as I'm working with others, can I learn to work together with other people to generate a collective client result? In other words, a result that's larger than the individual result. So I may be able to do my thing, but really I'm also expected to participate on a team to the extent that teamwork is needed in different types of services, so that we collectively generate larger results for larger client situations. Now, the third and the fourth lead from those first 2. So you want me there to be able to either learn how to or already be able to deliver an individual result, but also to learn how to work with other people and generate a collective result with them. The third one comes from that. If we've got people learning how to and really defining how to work well together, what happens is you strengthen the corporate culture. So that's a spin-off from the first 2. Okay, predominantly the second. And of course, the fourth thing that owners and the company want is basically to make progress towards achieving the company's larger purpose or its mission, if you want to call it that, whatever it is you call it. But what's the larger game that this whole business provides? They want people to make progress towards that, and they don't necessarily say we have to make progress towards a focus or towards a purpose. What they'll say is, If you learn how to generate the individual result and you're actually doing that well and you grow as an expert doing that, and then if you collectively can work and generate the larger client results, and if you do it in a way that actually serves and supports each other, that's what's sustainable. That gives me a stronger corporate culture, and it actually invariably leads to the purpose that I as an owner might want, or you as an owner might want of me, or one of us collectively, as far as that's concerned. So that's the owner half of this contract.
Yeah, and so you put them in sequence, and I want to make sure that we understand this. So generating an individual result, generate collective results, because individual results play into collective results. And I think that what I'm trying to get at is they are in that order, right? Individual results generate collective results, which helps to build a strong culture. So culture isn't cupcake carts and coffee in the lobby. It's collective results, which then makes progress towards the company's higher and larger purpose. Correct?
So how do there are projects, many projects require more than one person on the same job.
Mm.
Okay. So how do I make sure that you actually know how to work with each other in a manner that actually generates results for these larger client situations? And as a company grows, you get more of those. When it's tiny, it doesn't necessarily have those sometimes, but not always. But when it's bigger, it absolutely has those.
Yeah,
And so
that makes
individual, corporate, and you notice that I have number 2 underlined. I'll get to that in a minute.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. So then there's the individual employees. What does each employee expect? Number 1, to be paid. Everybody wants to be paid. Okay. You got to get the money right, obviously, but that's not where it stops. You see, that's if it stopped there, that would be a transactional basis. And that's what the old industrial model was. It's like, you work for me, you get your pay, go away.
And
Actually,
this is where it's sort of like some parity, right? Because individual results are sort of like table stakes for traditional companies, just
right.
like compensations, table stakes.
Yep. But then when you go to number 2, when we talk about generating collective results with each other towards larger client situations, the second thing in the employee side is professional training and growth. Now, if I just give you compensation, but I don't grow you, then what happens is that you go for as much as you can get as an employee. You'll get, you just want as much as you can get because that's all you're getting from the relationship. When I actually say, well, we'll also support your training and growth as a professional, now you're getting career growth. That's actually worth something to employees. They want as much to grow in their career as they want the money. What do you do with money? You either spend it or you save it to spend it later. I mean, whereas what do you do if
Simplistically,
I
yeah, for sure.
increase my professional training and position, I can get higher career growth. I can actually get better jobs. I can actually make more money that way. There's a number of things I can do. And that's just as important to people as getting the money right. Now, you have to get the money right. You can't not get the money right. But at the same time, that's not enough. It's the professional training and growth is there, and it's critical. So you notice I've got that underlined. And again, I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, the third thing is access to meaningful work. Now, think about this. If your commitment to me, let's say I'm your employee, is to give me professional training and growth, every job you give me, if you gear it so that it also helps grow me, even jobs that I might not be thrilled about, if they're growing me, they're now meaningful. So what happens is all my work becomes meaningful. And if all my work is meaningful, even if I don't necessarily love it all, I'm growing from it, then all of a sudden it becomes meaningful work. So it's actually easier to accomplish than people initially get concerned about if somebody's got a commitment to professional training and growth. And of course, the other one, the fourth element, is access to meaningful relationships, both in my workplace with fellow employees. And again, when we're learning how to work together to generate larger results, that comes from that. But also in client relationships and supplier relationships, there's a number of different relationships that go, because we want meaningful work, we want meaningful relationships. But I got to tell you, the core base thing is compensation, but number 2 is probably the most important piece on this list for both sides: the ability to generate collective results and the professional training and growth.
Yeah, and so like with the company side,
Yep.
and I just want to, so the company side, it felt like 1 led to 2, led to 3, led to 4. Is that the same on the employee side? are they sort of, are they building blocks from one to the?
Well, they are, except they all occur. Like they're building blocks in terms. Here's the thing: if you don't get the compensation right, none of the rest of it matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get the compensation and professional and training and growth, it's really hard to have meaningful work and meaningful relationships because everybody's worried about one or the other of numbers 1 and 2. Okay. If you have 1 and 2 in place, access to meaningful work becomes far more material, and over time you develop meaningful relationships as you work through, not only to get your own growth, but also to generate the results on the other side. So it's not like, well, I did number 2, now I can go to number 3. You need to do all 4, but they're different. They're similar levels to each other as far as that's concerned, stepping into the levels of depth of the relationship, of the social contract. But what's happening is, if you think I'm the boss and you're the employee, you just do your job. If that's how you think, you will continue to have problems. You will not get freedom. You will constantly be putting out fires, and you're constantly chasing people-based issues. If you can actually base it and understand and appreciate the importance of this little thing called the social contract, it's not so little, because it's the basis of really treating your people as part of the core of your business. And it's the basis of everything else that comes from it. Because if people feel like they have each other's backs and they're actively at work and making a difference for your clients in ways that they can enjoy the success and the just the achievement of it, because they don't have to protect themselves. I don't have a boss stealing my ideas. They actually credit the team for the work that we do, things like that. Then all of a sudden, this place gets far more interesting for me to be at as an employee. And if it's more interesting for us to do, we'll give our best. And if you've got us structured to give our best and we're giving our best, all of a sudden you as my boss have more freedom than you otherwise would have.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a direct link, not only from the social contract from both sides, but there's also a direct link between the social contract, rethinking the core, and your access to gain more freedom because of your business.
So here's the thing that I think is interesting about this. You call this the social contract, and I know you're very careful about wording frequently, right? You're very careful about the wording. When we hire people to join our companies, we say, this is what we want you to do, individual results, in exchange for this compensation. If we're really good employers, we might talk about some culture stuff. We might talk about some access to meaningful work stuff. We might talk about what we do as a company, as a call or a purpose, or what role we play. And we might talk about how great the company is and the people that are in it and blah blah blah. But we really, like, when we hire them, it's not in the offer. Compensation is, vacation time is, because I think compensation is part of vacation, like benefits, compensation, that all sits together, and the results are part of it. But you called this a social contract because whether or not we are intentional about these things or verbal about these things are happening. Like, our unconscious minds, we want all of these things, right?
Correct. And the truth is that I would actually make sure that at least numbers 1 and 2 are spelled out in agreement. See, number 3 and number 4 are the qualitative aspects of the work. And that's why we call it the social contract, because it's not just trading things back and forth. There is a social or a qualitative aspect to it. Now, there's quality to the work, obviously, as well. And there's, quality to the training and the growth as well. So qualitative hits it all, but 3 and 4 on each side really they're almost entirely qualitative, but you can tell when they're present versus when they're not. If you've got a strong corporate culture, okay, you can tell. And if you've got a weak corporate culture, you can tell. You can see it in sports teams. You can see it in just about anything. You can see it if you're going to a play. You can see it when you're, watching
But
an orchestra. You
for
can
a
see it.
second. Yeah, but Michael, let's talk about this.
Okay.
Right? People say that. You can see it. And I agree.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's listening right now and they're saying, and what do you mean by that? In my small business, what does that mean? What does that look like? People have may be familiar with, culture books and culture codes and again, cupcake carts and coffee shops and all this. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a culture that you can feel, see, and breathe when you walk into the organization, whatever organization. It can be a retail shop, it can be any kind of, there's a culture there, right? So
Yep.
what is that? What is it? Give me an example of what that looks like.
Well, sure. Let's go back to our survive versus thrive thing. If
Mm,
I have to protect myself at work from others, it's obvious to everybody. I'm focused on me. I'm focused on what I need. I'm focused on what I get. And everybody's focused on themselves, or enough people are focused on themselves that it actually is a little bit of a problem. Okay.
mhm,
When people are focused on supporting each other, or when somebody is stumbling or having difficulty, somebody else just naturally goes in and helps them. Or if somebody's out of line, somebody else naturally goes, yeah, we don't do that here. I mean, things like that are absolute evidence that you've got a team-based culture rather than a self-based culture. And I need a self-based culture if my survival at stake, either physical survival, but even my emotional survival. Like if I feel like I'm being put down, or I don't feel like I'm considered as valuable, or things like that, I'll do whatever. Self-advocacy comes up all the time. Okay. And it could be the difference between somebody needing to get, I got you on that, no problem. I mean, you could be a barista at a coffee shop, and you're actually helping the other person, as opposed, well, that's your issue, don't talk to me. I mean, you can tell very quickly whether you're in a group where people help each other, or whether you're in a group where people take care of themselves and it's the other person's issue. And I pick any facet of life, any business, you can see it. Am I naturally helping them? And are they just as quick to naturally help me?
yeah.
Or am I in a situation where no, it's each to himself or herself, or what have you. And then one place that you see this consistently, the military runs people through 17-week boot camp. They have one goal in mind. Okay, they will work the people beyond what they're comfortable with and to their breaking point. And they want to see, when I get you to and past your breaking point, where do you go? Do you go to yourself and go as a lone wolf, or do you go to others and actually look for the team for support, and actually also look to support each other? The people that go to the team are the ones that make it. The people that go to the self, no matter how good they are, get cut. And the reason that's the case is because I cannot put a platoon of people out when there's life and death involved and have somebody worried about themselves at the expense potentially of the whole platoon. We need people that are each on for each other. The reason that people will actually go into harm's way, and I mean, that's their 17 weeks of boot camp. It's there for 2 years in Navy SEAL training. Okay. The reason people go for harm's, or get themselves into harm's way, is because they know that the person to their left or to their right would also do the same for them. People say that
Yeah.
they actually give for their country. In theory, they do. In real life, they give for the person to the left and to the right and the others in their group, because they trust each other with their lives. And as a result, they know that other people can trust them with theirs. That's when it gets really, when life and death is involved. You also find it in fire departments. You'll find it in more under the gun police, environments. I can't speak for all police environments. That's its own hornet's nest these days, but you'll definitely see it in fire departments, because there's a common enemy, and the common enemy is the flames, right? And so it's amazing to see what happens there. Okay, you can also professional teams.
If you're wondering, like if you're listening to this right now, and if you're wondering that's true in the military, it absolutely true. You can go back and listen to Christopher Schmidt or Navy Bob on Paper Napkin Wisdom. Both are senior ranking military people. Both talked about how love in the military, loving on your teams, giving love and spreading love within your teams is the right way to build high performance military teams. And that's, I was talking about the nuclear submarine commander Navy Bob, talking about how the very first thing was he brought a loving team environment to his submarine command, and that changed all of their results. So if you're doubting this, go back and listen to it from the horse's mouths, because they'll talk about Special Operations Forces Command, which is where Christopher Schmidt came from. This is like dark ops, secret ops kind of stuff, and Navy Bob nuclear submarine stuff. And both of them talked about love at work, which is incredible to me.
Well, it makes full sense because guess what? If anybody has hesitation, people die.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah. Generally avoidable.
Yeah, who would put themselves voluntarily into an arrangement if they had any doubt whether the person next to them has just as much resolve as they do? And that means that there's this responsibility for them to have resolve. So this is not just like, hold hands, kumbaya stuff. This is like real life and death stuff. And that power to connect and the power to adapt, has to come from a commitment to thrive. And you got to have survival taken care of. If you can take survival off the mat, you've got access to the rest of it. And these are basic human needs.
So once we've got access to it, they're part of the core. Understanding. So this is the key, right? Understanding the social contract puts you in a position of dealing with these unconscious needs that everybody's got, but no one's necessarily talking about unless you make it part of the dialogue. As leaders, it's your company, make it part of the dialogue. So why did you underline number two on both sides of the equation?
Because the individual client results, people already know they expected to do that. Okay. Where the real growth of people is, and the real opportunity for people and the opportunity to have them work with each other and take care of this survival thing shows up when you start putting them together. Most people are not very skilled at how to build and work with teams. Okay. We're taught, and we've got a whole section on this in one of our future episodes, but I got to tell you, we're not very good working in teams, and owners need their people to grow in that area. The other side of it is people want to grow in their careers, and what we're going to be talking about next time in our next episode, number 6, is the whole thing about hiring. Okay, and not everybody should be on your team. Not everybody should be a Navy SEAL. Not everybody should be in the military. Not everybody should be in the fire department. Not everybody should be on that play where, where you've got a bunch of actors that are working with each other to actually generate a result for their audience. So you don't have to take everybody. The key is you want to get right fit people that work for you. And we'll get into that there. But just because but where you do want somebody, then what are the commitments that you need to make to them? What are the commitments that you expect them to make to you? If you get clear on that, it's easier to have them be part of the core because you're actually betting your ability to generate a result on the people that you bring in. Now, whether you do the social contract or not, you're still betting that. The only difference is we're making it conscious and saying, if you want this social contract, or if you want this including people as part of the core to really work, this is part of what it looks like. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I could live with that. I could do that. You know what? This is expected of me once more than I would have thought, but it's not that much more and I can do that. And yes, I do expect that from them. And it's probably a little bit more than they may have thought, but you know what? If for the right person, this could work really well.
And if you're speaking it, you have a shot of making it happen. If you're not speaking it, people are just filling the blanks. And the way that employees on your team right now are accessing meaningful work, if you're not filling the pathway, is they're doing it with their feet, right? They're thinking about where they can do it somewhere else, aren't they?
Correct. Absolutely. And back to the other things, we're going to be providing tools for each of these. Like for professional training and growth, there's whole sets of tools with regards to that. And it really will, it becomes way easier than you think to give people meaningful work. Right now, it's like, in an architecture firm, I really want to get the cool projects as opposed to the more mundane projects. Well, if people are actually committed to professional growth, and even the mundane projects start to become really interesting if they help you grow your skills and grow as a professional.
Mm. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is really important. So I'm a big believer in scorecards. And we had this conversation prior to starting the episode, the recorded portion of this, but I'm a big believer in scorecards, making sure that people understand not only what great looks like within their roles, but what they could be obsessed about, what skills they could bring to the table, what their mission is within their role, how it contributes to greater organizational results. So what their individual contribution means relative to the organization. But the other part of this that I think is so brilliant that a lot of people miss is these are other things that could be on their scorecard, right? Access to professional training and growth, how they can understand what success looks like in that regard, how they can learn, solve, and adjust and tweak it to move them towards more meaningful work, towards meaningful relationships. All those things could be put right there and empower the individual so they can see that map, right? And that's important to do, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you do that, and it's a conscious active step, it's not just talking about stuff, it's a conscious active step. And there are ways to actually support people in their professional training and growth. But if you do that piece, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier when you were doing the recap, that the core actually is designed to generate results that provide your customers with value, while at the same time generating your profit, while at also concurrently generating the professional growth that your people require. In other words, these can all be done with the same actions. And so by overlapping them, and we're going to show how to overlap them eventually, or in a future in a few comments, but if you can overlap all three concurrently, then I'm not increasing the workload to accomplish this. And that's the biggest thing that people are afraid of, especially when they feel like there's limits to their freedom and it feels like it's shrinking, not growing. Well, actually, it's a little bit of a, this is not one of those that's obvious. Okay. It's counterintuitive. By doing it is easier to line up the three things when you take an ecosystem model, because it just has to work for everybody for an ecosystem to work. And the good news is there are ways to actually have it work for everybody.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to start to dig into deeper and deeper as we explore the freedom framework, as we explore how you can get freedom in the business, from the business, and because of the business, by understanding and leveraging the social contract as a means to communicate more effectively, align your team to the things that are all important to them, and empower them in that direction. Michael, another powerful episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.